So we'll get this edition of our community call series launched. Today we're going to be having another one of our wonderful brainstorming sessions on the medium and long-term impact that you guys are predicting for your own businesses, and that we might just have a discussion about the impact to the industry at large as well. Um, our agenda for today will be much like previous calls, and we'll go over Zoom really quickly for anyone who hasn't been here before, cover a couple really basic ground rules, and then we'll just dive right into our discussion. I'll give you a couple little seeds to get you thinking, and then give you some good news that I noticed as I was preparing for this call and excited to share with you guys. And then we can dive right into our brainstorm session. When we're doing the brainstorm session, you guys have been awesome sharing all of your ideas and thoughts on the last call. So just keep throwing those hands up in the air, and we'll give everyone a chance to talk and hopefully get some questions answered here as well. Um, as always, you can chat amongst yourselves or directly to the panelists with the chat button right at the lower middle of your screen. If you do want to chat with everyone, make sure you just hit that drop-down button and select all panelists and attendees. That way everyone can see what you're typing. As I mentioned,
I don't
want to
think
see
I understand
some
what
great
else.
questions and answers coming from people. So throw any questions you have starting now into that Q&A box, and we'll have those addressed by everybody as we go through the call. If you see a question that you want to ask that's already been typed in, just go ahead and upvote it with a little thumb in the lower left. And a little too far. And then, like I said, really hoping to hear from all of you guys on this call. So make sure you use that raise hand button right in the lower middle of your screen, and we'll unmute you. When you see that you're unmuted, there'll be a little pop-up. Just click unmute myself, and you'll be ready to talk. So yeah, make use of that feature. This call is for all of you guys. And we will get going here. And yes, last but not least, our ground rules, as always, will be to be polite and respectful for each other. If we do unmute you, just keep your comments to around 2 minutes so that everyone gets a chance to talk and to have their ideas heard. And keep any personal political commentary out of this. And anyone who violates any of these rules, we will have to remove them from the call. I wanted to start, just to get everyone's brains working here. Some topics for this discussion could be things that we know about, things that we worry about, and then even on the bright side, some opportunities that might exist on the long-term, medium and long-term side of this pandemic. So, some of the things we know are that our operations are going to be impacted for the near term, likely for the midterm, hopefully not for the long term, but we'll see. We also know our members do want to come back and climb with us again. So that there are some bright spots to focus on here and there when it comes to building communities and keeping people loyal. Some of the things I'm sure everyone's worried about are whether there's going to be a permanent decline in customers, if there's any stigma around climbing, or people are just unsure about what's going on. And also, like, when can we return to having events and competitions and youth teams and all those fun things that are great for our community, but also great revenue centers for our gyms. And then we also have a worry about unclear and changing rules as we go forward. A lot of the timelines are unclear. A lot of the guidelines that we have to follow are still unclear. And then, like I said, I think there are opportunities here. On a few of our previous calls, heard some really interesting new business models that people are coming up with to try to figure out how to navigate some of these situations. It might be the case that there's a whole different types of gyms that get born out of this. So it'll be really interesting to see how that all develops. And then, this is a chance that a lot of you have already taken to really build a stronger community, just strengthen your community, and participate in the loyalty of your customers. That little bit of good news that I wanted to mention was looking at some of the recent job reports and unemployment claims data that's coming out. It seems to me, anyway, based on the surveying that we've done in 2019 with our indoor climber survey, that our customer base is particularly is going to be impacted the least out of any sector in society. When you look at the average climbing gym member, there's someone who works full time. They're likely to earn between $50,000 and $150,000 a year. They're likely to have a bachelor's degree or above, and they're likely to be employed in professional and technical services, healthcare and social assistance, and education, which are the three least impacted industries, looking at the current available data. Um, looks like a couple little data points there, I guess. So to back that up, for the professional and technical services sector, we have data from the US government on that. Lower paying jobs in that sector did see some pretty significant losses, but the higher paying jobs actually gained in the month of March this year. So people are working, they still have income coming in, and they're likely to be your customers. So yeah, just wanted to share that with you guys. I think there's, like I said, little bright spots here and there that we can eke out, and this is yeah, just one that I thought would be relevant to everyone here. So with that little opening, yeah, I just want to dive right in and start getting some ideas and thoughts from you guys. See what you're worried about, what you're thinking. We've got one question. Oh, so this one's for the CWA. With gyms opening up already, does the CWA plan to have posters available? And if so, what's the expected date? Yep, definitely we'll have posters for you guys. It is going to be branded through our Climb Smart program. Posters will likely cover, personal hygiene guidance for your customers, and then also communication to your customers about what their expectations of safety are and what you're doing to help keep them comfortable in your facilities. Um, let's see. So those are the two posters that we're very concretely planning on. Are there any other posters that you guys would like to see or other information from us? Let's see, got a question in the chat about sharing those stats. I assume that's the stats on our kind of the average climbing gym member. And yeah, we can definitely do that. We'll follow that up maybe in a blog article after this call to be published in our next newsletter. Um, let's see. So yeah, I'll give some time. Anyone want to just throw their hand up, and we'll let you share some ideas that you might have. Either, like I said, things that you're concerned about, or things that you're looking forward to as we begin to reopen and start looking at rebuilding our businesses. All right. Thanks for throwing the hand up, Jason. I just unmuted you. What are you thinking about?
Morning, guys. Thanks for having these again. I'm starting as I venture out to help help support my local cafe, for example, and I see people out and about. Starting to be a little bit concerned about training my staff how to interact with completely non-compliant members that think it's a hoax or don't like what we're doing. Or I mean, we've dealt with that for years as climbing gym operators, like belay technique or whatever. But I mean, people walking in, if we do require masks, poo-pooing it or completely disregarding it or ignoring social distancing. So it's started to been a concern recently. That's it.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Jason. And I think it's a really good point. That's going to certainly be something that we'll have to train staff around. We'll have to be mindful of people who either completely flout rules or aren't following them to following the individual procedures that you guys come up with. And I think it's going to be important, right, that staff is empowered to enforce those rules and have a way um, to have those discussions. And that's a great one. I'll take some notes on and see if we can provide some advice in either further webinars or in maybe some blog articles on how to have those conversations and what kind of training you can provide for your staff. Let's see, we've got another question here around youth summer camps. So I guess that's a bit of a near-term question, but even maybe a midterm question. Is there anyone out there who have any planning that they'd be able to share about their summer camps either this year or what they're thinking in the future? All right, let's hear from Audrey.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Well, what we're doing, we don't have anything concrete because I think the overarching thing for everyone is we just don't know. So right now we're planning for a very, very late summer, early fall summer camp with the full knowledge that we might not be able to do it. And of course, having a max head count of maybe 10 or 12 kids, that kind of thing. So that's what we're doing. Nothing concrete, and we are definitely not advertising it yet.
All right. And where are you located, Audrey? Which gym?
Zenith Climbing Center in Springfield, Missouri.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Oh, I see there's a little follow-up question here as well on camp size. So anyone else planning on camp size? Looks we got Brian here. I'll unmute you there, Brian.
Yeah, so we're in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and our mayor just announced their plans for the city-run youth programs for the summer. They're planning on starting some of their programs on June 8th with limited capacity, and then swimming pools and their portable rock climbing wall will begin on July 1st. So we're sort of following that lead. We're going to cancel most of our June camps. We do have one camp later in June that we're going to run with limited numbers, 8 kids. And then starting the second week in July, we have about a month worth of programs, and our current intent is to go ahead and run those camps, but reduce the capacity by about a third. So we're going to have 8 kids for the younger camps, and then 10 kids for the older camps.
Okay. And are most of your activities in the climbing gym? Oh, all right. Let's see. Saw someone else had their hand up for a second on the camp issue. Now, to kind of broaden this back to the midterm, long-term discussion, you know, is anyone worried about or foresee any impact on, say, your camp participation a year from now, 2 years from now? Obviously, a really hard thing to know conclusively, but yeah, I'd love to hear any worries or, like I said, opportunities or bright spots you guys see there. And let's hear from Heather.
Hey, Garnet, how you doing?
Doing well.
Good. So my question or concern around camps is whether we'll also have to change how we run these types of activities in order to make sure that we minimize the risk of any type of viral transmission, and whether or not that will impact size. I know some people are already talking about reducing size, but I'm wondering if there's also going to be considerations around how much climbing time they get because of cleanliness. In terms of the second part of the question you asked, what I find, I think going forward, so much is going to change. It's not just going to impact our area. I think there will be a lot of people who are afraid to participate, but what we're seeing here is just as many people who are acting as if there's nothing happening. So not recognizing social distancing. And I think those folks will be coming into the gyms. I'm concerned about protecting employees and how we'll manage that and move forward with the types of activities we've been doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and with some of the uncertain timelines around that, employee safety is a really interesting question, because it's there's practices that might evolve over the next number of months or even years, depending on when this completely comes to a conclusive end. And I see a bunch of chat in the chat box around that question, especially with masks specifically. And I saw one great comment in there was that someone was planning on requiring masks from the beginning, mostly because, and hopefully I'm not putting words in their mouths, whoever that was, but mostly because it's easier to roll that back once you can, rather than having to add it if there becomes a more clear guidance from their local public health authorities. And when it comes to employees, always the first place to look is your local relevant public health authorities probably get published guidance, and there might even be laws and mandates that apply to that. So make sure you're checking OSHA in the US or any comparable body in other countries. Let's hear from Shauna.
Hey, so I was actually the one who wrote the question about the youth summer camps.
Okay.
And we've been thinking very much along the same lines as far as when we start and decrease numbers and things like that. And right now we're in just outside of Boulder in Longmont, and our county health department is requiring masks. And I'm just curious if anybody on here has actually tried to climb in a mask. I was doing something that required a bit of exertion the other day, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is intense to try to heavy breathe in a mask, and then to ask kids to do that as well. It just feels like there's so many complications that I don't remember who was saying maybe starting at a later date, maybe towards the end of June, early July, might just make more sense if there's an opportunity for not being required to wear masks, and just trying to do that social distancing with smaller groups with kids. But I was just curious if there's anybody who's actually tried to climb with a mask on, if that had been successful for them.
What is this all about? What is this fulfillment all about? One of the things I hear Rod say multiple times.
Yep. Looks like a little crosstalk. Sorry about that. Yeah. I guess one of those little opportunities is when it comes to climbing in masks. I think that'll all help us climbing at elevation, should we need to go through any of that training. But I think you're exactly right. Physical exertion with an appropriate mask, especially, is pretty hard, especially when you're working at a high level or in a more aerobic fashion. Your question, to bring that around to the question with youth camps, one thing that I've noticed that's interesting is a variety of guidance from different states and countries on what age mask wearing should start, anywhere from 2 years old to 10 years old, and some measures in between. And I do see in the comments there's someone, or there's a few people out there perhaps, who don't have mandated masks and aren't planning on asking their customers to wear them. I'd love to hear some thought behind that opinion, and what your concerns are. If assuming you're in the US anyway, there's a general guideline or recommendation from the CDC on mask wearing. No laws. Most of the laws, it seems, are on the municipal level for that. But yeah, I'd love to hear from someone who's in that position where they're deciding not to require masks in their gym. All right. Yeah, another interesting little comment in the chat that'll in regards to masks. Someone out there surveyed their customers and found that 20% of their customers, at least who responded to that initial survey, wouldn't come to their climbing gym if masks are required. So that's one of the arguments against them, obviously.
So going back to something that I think Brian Pletta had said, he's planning to reduce his camp size by a third. And I was just curious, Brian or anybody else, how you're arriving at the number or the capacity reduction number that you're going to be using, and what sort of metrics you're looking to help you make that decision.
All right, you should be ready to talk, Brian.
You know, really, there's no scientific basis for it. It's just something that I kind of decided off the cuff. But basically, we decided instead of having 3 instructors, we would drop down to 2 instructors, keep our same ratios, but then that would reduce the numbers in the camp. And the main reason for that is, you know, imagining having either 12 6-year-olds or 15, you know, I mean 18 8-year-olds running around in a pack seemed daunting. So it seemed smart to just limit it down to a smaller number, at least to start with, and see how things go. We do intend to probably split the group up and put them in different parts of the gym so that the group sizes themselves are a little bit smaller. But, you know, I'm just struggling with how do we keep these kids away from each other and keep a 6-foot distance between them. And so starting with smaller numbers seems smart.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because we just got a follow-up question in the Q&A for you about how you plan to manage social distancing even with reduced numbers, and it sounds like that's something you're still trying to figure out.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure that we'll have to change some of the game, you know, like we do some different games with the kids that involve physical contact. So we're going to have to come up with some games that encourage distance. So, you know, maybe we'll eliminate rope climbing with a partner, so belaying, and we'll just go to bouldering and auto belay use only for those groups. But these are just some ideas. We haven't really come up with any firm answers yet.
And a little follow-up question for you, Brian. And this is going to be a hard question, so feel free to decline to answer it if you need to. If you set up a model that works for you this year at that reduced capacity for camps, do you think that's something that you'd be able to sustain for years, or do you see that just as a stopgap measure to get through, you know, the immediate short-term issues?
I mean, if they come up with a vaccine and this virus is no longer a problem, I would see going back to the original model that we use. Our youngest age group, we have, I think it's 15 kids is what we normally do with 3 instructors, and then for our older the 2 age groups older than that, we do 18 kids with 3 instructors. And that's worked for us in the past. It seems like to be like good ratios, and you know, the groups work well. You know, it's nice having 3 instructors to be in charge of a group rather than 2. But yeah, so this year we're mainly just reducing it just to reduce the group size and see how that goes. But I wouldn't see continuing this unless.
Okay, yeah, thanks for that, Brian. And see, you've got your hand up as well again, Shauna. Let's, if you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, we were also thinking around 10, and the way that we had come up with that, or I had come up with that number, was to fit well with our maximum capacity, because we have to keep that in mind. We're a bouldering only gym, so and we have about 15,000 square feet. So we're thinking of a 36 max 6x6 square grid. And so I can't imagine having more than 10 kids to take away from the total number of members that are able to climb in the gym during that, potential 9 to 3 o'clock time frame during the summer. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But I'm also wanting to have 2 coaches for that 10 kid ratio. And it's just, we worry about it being financially sustainable. It's not something that we could really sustain for the future. I think it's something right now that we're looking at more of a service to the community and service to our coaches. But for the facility itself, financially, it's pretty much a wash.
No, thanks for that. And you touched on a really interesting point, and I see some comments on the in the chat around this as well when it comes to occupancy. And I think it's important to remember that, when you're looking at some of those occupancy numbers, it's not just about the climbers that are there or the youth that are in the team. It's also the instructors, as Shauna mentioned, and any other employees in your facility. So yeah, see, you've got your hand up, Walson. I'll unmute you now.
Yeah, actually, this one's for Brian. Actually, have or anyone has. Brian, are you worried about? I remember we've been doing camps for a long time, Bo and I. Are you worried about parents dropping off kids that might be sick in the morning, telling mom and dad that they're sick in the morning? The parents are just like, yeah, okay, I got to race to work here now that things are getting a little bit better. I'll just drop you off and we'll deal with it later. Are you planning on maybe taking temperatures of kids or anything as they come in the door, or just?
Yeah, we are considering taking temperature of kids. I just bought 2 of those forehead thermometers, and trying to decide whether or not we want to take temperatures of employees, customers, kids in our drop-off programs. I think right now we're leaning towards taking temperatures of our employees. That seems to be a strong recommendation by the state, by our state guidance. So I think we're going to do that. I would hope that any members that are feeling sick would not come into the gym, any adult members, but sometimes it's a little trickier with kids. So I think we might, check kids in and take their temperature when they walk in the door.
All right. And that ties in nicely with some of the comments I've seen on here as well. There's I think it's it looks like Kenneth was mentioning that there's a practical side of policies, and then there's also the emotional side of making people feel comfortable in the facility. So some of those measures work on both of those levels, and some of them work more on the comfort side. I think that's going to be a really a really tough challenge to navigate when it comes to having people self-identify as sick or of having contacted people. It's going to be something that we have to rely on our customers' personal responsibility on a lot. There isn't a lot around a great way around that's totally evident yet. So let's see. A great comment here in the question box, a bit more of a comment than a question, but that's okay. Yeah, the American Camp Association is working hard on trying to figure out how to open up their summer camps, obviously mostly largely residential facilities and things of that nature. But I know that they're working on that, and they're trying to get some specific guidance around things like youth in residential camps, and some of the information that they develop through that will probably be pretty relevant for us as well. So great thing for you guys to keep a close eye on. Is something that we're keeping a close eye on as well. Let's see. See any other questions out there, or if there's something that, again, that people would like to bring to the long-term and midterm impacts that they might see on the industry as a whole as well. Anyone worried about stigmatization of climbing or just fitness gyms in general, or fitness industry, sports industry, however you like to identify yourself? Is that a primary concern for you guys, or something that you think that you're members are going to just stick with you through it, and it's not going to have a long-term knock-on effect. All right, thanks for jumping in, Brian. See, I've got you. There you go.
Sorry about that. I saw a really interesting chart from our governor this weekend that puts the risk of different types of businesses related to the number of contacts that people have in the facility versus the, I guess, the sustained nature of those contacts. And it put gyms right pretty much in the middle. You know, we're definitely below theaters and bars and concert venues, you know, large venues like that. Maybe a little bit above retail, and some, you know, just slightly above restaurants also. But I didn't, you know, I didn't really see it as gyms being someplace that was viewed as being really like a really a dangerous place for exposure, I guess. So that made me feel a little bit better about it.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. That's definitely the direction that we're looking towards, and a lot of the evidence seems to support that as well. There is not a unique or especially heightened risk of a risk in a climbing gym or even in a fitness facility. We're not terribly different from, as Brian said, retail or a hardware store. And in some ways, we have some advantages over those locations because we can monitor traffic a little bit better. We have larger, more open facilities with a little bit less crowding than or a little less potential for crowding than some of those other types of businesses see. So I think that'll be a large piece of the communication that we do as an organization at the CWA, and then I think it should be a large portion of the communication that you guys do to your customers, really informing them that there's nothing uniquely dangerous or risky about being in a climbing gym. And it's also important to emphasize, I mean, we're an industry that deals with risk day in, day out. That's what we do. That's how we educate our customers and train our customers. These are conversations that we have to have all the time, and we're especially good at having. So I would, play to our strengths about knowing how to navigate those risks and knowing that our customers can make those kinds of choices in certain cases. So that thinking can really go into shaping your operations and policy around reopening. See a couple other questions pop in here. Here's a great long-term question. With the large amount of home walls being built, does anyone see a change in the gym business model? Is anyone predicting more punch card use versus memberships because people have invested in home walls? Do home walls change anything at all? Anyone out there have an opinion on that? Well, I'll start. Oh, nope, cool. We got Audrey. You should be ready to go, Audrey.
Okay. Well, just from personal experience, my husband built a home wall in our house before we opened our gym. And when we first built it, we probably used it once a week, and then we never used it. So I think that that's not a huge concern for me. Home walls are good for training, but I think people are going to get kind of tired of them and just be itching to get back in the gym. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, and I share that opinion pretty strongly. If you look at an industry like the fitness industry, where there's a lot of body weight exercises that can be done, and even just with a few dumbbells or a home exercise machine or some virtual coaching, you can get a lot done at home. There's no way to replace a proper bouldering wall, and certainly no, for most people, there's no way to have anything like a top rope wall or a lead wall in your home. So I don't think we have as strong of a threat as the fitness industry has in that regard, or some of the other entertainment, businesses that are out there. If anything, it might be one of those hidden opportunities that we were talking about, where you can expand your coaching to include people's home walls, give them homework. So if you have a member who's also paying for a personal coach, perhaps there's some ways you can leverage some of these home training tools that people have purchased, whether it's just a hang board or a full-on home wall. Okay. Anyone else out there have any comments on home walls?
The other thing that came to mind for me is that people might get sick of climbing their own routes that they set at home. So you can't really replace the creativity of your route setters and the new challenges that they offer with a home wall.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a question here. The obvious difference between us and other types of gyms is the issue of shared equipment holds that cannot be cleaned. Again, I think that that comes down to having good information to provide to people. So in a sense, that's true. If you want to talk about a fitness gym, it's certainly common for people to use spray bottles and clean the equipment, or if they're behaving nicely to each other, it's appropriate for them to have spray bottles and wipe off their sweat between use. Conversely, if you look at a hardware store, they're not sanitizing every box of nails on the shelf. If you go to your grocery store, they're not cleaning every bag of rice. We don't have a highly unique risk here compared to other businesses. And again, we're in a business where risk is something that we deal with every day, and people can behave appropriately to mitigate those risks, whether that's using proper belay technique or ensuring that you don't touch your face before you wash your hands. I think those are practices that people can develop and that we can educate our customers to adopt. Let's see, anyone else out there with well, I think that's not so much of a long-term concern. Let's see. And I guess another question here about sanitizing our climbing wall. I guess I would assume that just means that all the routes and not the wall itself. And I'd give the same answer. There's no strong evidence out there that that's a step that's going to really reduce risk any more than proper personal hygiene will. And I think as an industry, that's kind of the proper line for us, is really leaning heavily on, again, our risk mitigation strategies and proper hygiene that we can expect from our climbers. Okay, for back to the long-term side of things, Brian had some questions around revenue projections. I'll probably throw up a poll around that. Let me see if I've got one queued up here. And then, yeah, if anyone would like to throw their hand up and make some comments around either cleaning the holds or any of the revenue projections, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. All right, and so we have another question here around loose chalk versus liquid chalk, and any plans to ban that. Anyone out there with some strong opinions one way or the other? And then also in this medium or long-term side of things, do you see any of those choices you're making now around those issues something that could affect what you allow in your gym for years to come? All right, Wilson.
Yeah, what I'm hoping to do is not ban loose chalk, but I'm definitely going to encourage liquid chalk. I think both in the facility would be great. I like how I can kill two birds with one stone, where I can loose chalk will help minimize the dust, but also the alcohol content will help with the virus. So I'm not necessarily in agreement of banning loose chalk just for liquid chalk. I find it really difficult if a person's halfway up a route and needs to needs to chalk up, you know. So I think both will be a really good addition.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It kind of ties back into climbing with a mask, like we mentioned earlier. Bouldering with liquid chalk versus lead climbing with liquid chalk are two different animals. And so I'll throw up a poll around that and see how many people out there are planning on doing this. Anyone out there who is planning on requiring liquid chalk and banning any loose chalk or bald chalk? All right, let's hear from Rob. Thanks for raising that hand.
Yeah, so we are, hello everybody, we're coming out of the gate requiring liquid chalk, but we're also supplying the liquid chalk to soften the blow to our members. So we placed an order for some bulk liquid chalk, and we'll at least be using that initially. I think it's really about coming out of the gates, kind of doing everything we can, and we think this will help. I don't foresee it being a permanent requirement, although maybe we can twist some members' arms into realizing our air quality has improved. But I think, you know, once we're a few weeks in or a month in or whatever it looks like, that we will loosen that requirement. Plus, it's an additional expense to the gym that we probably don't want to support in perpetuity.
All right. Yeah, thank you for that. And let's hear from Eric as well.
Unmute. All right, thanks. These are, I guess I have more of a long-term concern that I'd love to hear anyone's feedback on is, you know, short-term, I think everybody's got some great ideas on how to help keep our community safe. But as we've talked over the years as a company, and we've been doing this for 22 years now, rock climbing is usually the 10th or 11th thing down our list of what we actually offer to our community. And now we're turning that into our primary offering and really making it transactional. How do we support our community and our culture and why people come on a Thursday night, whatever their normal nights are? How do we not lose that short and long term?
That's a really excellent comment, Eric, and yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, and I'd love to hear anyone's feedback on that. Looks like we got Shauna. I'll just unmute you.
I think that's a great question. We're also in a similar boat. We do fitness classes, we do a lot of community events, we do yoga. So I think right now we're looking at opportunities to continue our virtual offerings as well as add in some outdoor classes to help with the ventilation and just distance of members working out and doing yoga in an open air type setting. But it can feel a little overwhelming and discouraging almost to think about how we really need to keep the numbers limited and people separate from each other. Our business is all based on community, and I think we're kind of starting off once we're able to open with just our members. I'm sure a lot of people are doing that as well, not allowing for any day pass options or anything like that, and just kind of feeling it out and seeing where everyone is at. And I think that will give us some good guidelines on how to move forward. We've also put out a survey to all of our members and asked them two really important questions, along with information about freezing or continuing their monthly payment. Was, what could we have done better during this closure, and do you plan to come back? And then the third question is, how do you foresee us reopening? What would be important to you? So those three questions have really given us a lot of really great information as to what our community would like us to do better in the future, if we ever have to do that. Hopefully we don't, but then also what it looks like moving forward.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that. I think that question of what could we have done better is a really interesting one, since there's some likelihood that there could be another round of closures. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but something that is on the in the realm of possibility anyway, or even just a wave of a cycle of closing and not closing until we come to the ultimate conclusion of all of this. And so a question like that might help inform some of those future decisions that people hopefully don't have to, but might have to make. I just pulled up our indoor climber survey, and that's where I got that data on the education and income of the average climber, and so that's available on the CWA website, the full report and full survey. But one of the things that I remember reading in it that it just caught my ear, and as it pertained to Eric's comment, was some of the driving factors when it comes to what makes a member choose a particular gym. And some of the ones that you'd expect there, cost and proximity, are big on the list. But the third most important amenity was climbing specific amenities, and that was important to about 80% on average of the respondents. Whereas if you get down to something like general fitness amenities, it's about 38, 39% across all the different demographics. And then other services, other amenities like retail shops and cafes, you're getting down into like the 20% range. So I guess one little bright spot there is maybe the climbing is really important. That's maybe a different answer than where the revenue centers in the gyms are, and where you can find some of those extra sources of revenue to keep growing. But just one little thing I can share with you guys there. I did put up that liquid chalk poll. We've got about half of the people have responded so far. I'm going to leave that up for another maybe 2 minutes, and then we'll get a poll up in regards to Brian's question on revenue forecasting. Let's see. Oh, here's a great question on this medium to long-term topic. Is anyone out there taking advantage of this opportunity to make changes that they've always wanted to make? Painting that old wall, changing out the flooring, anything along those lines. Yeah, I'd love to hear someone speak to that. And also any creative ideas of things that they're adding. All right, let's hear from John.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Good. Yeah, when we built our building, I had always wanted to have an easy way to ventilate the whole space. We had a roll-up door, but no way to push that air out. And so I'm at least getting a quote for what it's going to cost to install some fans up high in the opposite corner of the building to suck all that air out, so that people don't, even if people don't see all that chalk hiding in the air. We've got really good filtration now, but there's still times when chalk does start to build up. So nobody can understand me. Yeah, I don't know how to fix that.
Oh, you sound a little better now. Thanks.
Okay, I'll slow down. So we have good filtration in our building now, but I want to be able to vent out all that chalk-filled air. So we're going to install, or at least investigating the cost of installing some large fans up high in the building to pull air in through our roll-up door and push all that air out, so people feel more comfortable in the space.
Great. Yeah, it's a great time to get all of that work done. Some of the other things I'm seeing in the comments are people who've installed adjustable crack systems. A couple of people taking this time to change their policy in regards to wearing street shoes on the climbing walls, and moving to a climbing shoe only policy. And here's a great one too. Our customer service team is going to be cross-training with the event staff, so that there's a bit more overlap and a bit more of what I would assume would be streamlined and efficient staff engagement as well. I'm going to close that liquid chalk survey, and I'll display the results to you guys. It looks like pretty split. A lot of people are going to be encouraging liquid chalk use, but not really having any strict policy. And about a quarter of the people looks like they'll be going to a no loose chalk at all policy. I'm also going to take this chance to launch another poll on that revenue question that Brian had. And so I'll get that up right now. And I was also going to take that second to remind you, we do have a survey. If you go to the Climbing Wall CWA coronavirus page, climbingwallindustry.org/coronavirus, we do have an economic impact survey that we're using the data from to have any discussions and make any arguments we need to make with in regards to any of our advocacy efforts, so we can communicate or try to communicate the impact on the industry at large. So if you haven't taken a chance to fill that survey out yet, it'd be great if you could. It's just climbingwallindustry.org/coronavirus. And then if you navigate down to the advocacy section, there's a link right to that survey. It's pretty quick, just a few easy questions. So that'd be a great help if you guys were able to fill that out. Looks like we're coming close to the end of the hour here. So I'm going to see if there's any last little questions. Looks like a couple other people are taking the shutdown as an opportunity to do some office remodeling, some repaints. Yeah, some great ideas there. And okay, see how many people are going to this poll. We got about half the people responding to the poll, so I'll leave this up for a few more minutes. And does anyone want to throw in a last question or comment? Feel free to raise your hand or type it into that question box, and we'll get it up before we end this call. All right. So I'll leave this poll up for another maybe minute or so, and hopefully you guys can all join us for our call this Thursday. We're going to discuss a little bit of what we've been doing on the advocacy side for you guys, what we've been putting together, and some of the campaigns we're going to launch, or at least launch the next phase of. And then we also wanted to hear from you and see if there's things that you need from us that you haven't been getting yet, and on the advocacy front, and any areas that you're particularly concerned of, either for your just individual location or on a countrywide level. So I'll close out this survey and let's see where people are at. All right. Looks like probably about 30–40% is, well, anywhere from 30 to 50% maybe is the majority of the respondents on this call. Yep, join us on Thursday for that next call. And if you want to see any more of this economic data, just make sure you fill out the survey on our website. And as always, we're here for you guys. So if you need anything, just get in touch with us directly or through the website, and we'll try to get you all the information that we can, and as in timely a manner as possible. With that, we'll see you on the next call, and thank you very much for your time.